The sermon is titled The Hope of Glory. I want to start out. How many of you have watched some kind of movie this past last year? In the movie, you probably saw actors and actresses and celebrities. What's another name for what we call celebrities? Stars. Yeah. We have like Hollywood. We have what's it called? Like where they put their stars on the sidewalk. We call them stars. And it's because they shine in their talents and their giftings that God has given them. But what happens is that Satan, he perverts their God-given talents and he turns it inward. Because Satan is the god of this world, what he does is he tries to get us as people to become in his likeness instead of God's likeness. And the likeness of Satan, and the reason that's why he was cast out of heaven was because he was inward focused. And he himself was a great worshiper. The Bible talks about that he was really good at worshiping. And he just, because of his pride, and he was focused on his own ego and glorifying himself, that's why he was cast out of heaven instead of glorifying God. And so that's what Satan tries to do. And celebrities, to a lot of like young people, they're who they idolize and who they look up to. And obviously Satan does that on purpose. He wants the world to idolize what he wants, what he says the world should be like, which is self-centered, focused on our own talents and glorifying ourselves, always talking about ourselves and our own desires. What God tells us to do is to crucify ourselves and to give glory to him. So I'm going to read Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. In the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. So when we become born again believers, it should no longer be us living for our own selves and our own desires and our own agendas, but living for God in Christ in us. And it's because of his love for us that he allowed him to be inside of us. Before Christ died, he wasn't inside of us. And so that's a gift that he did that because of his great love. And I know for my own self, it's a constant battle to die to my own agenda, my own desires, to try to control everything and make it happen the way that I think it should happen. And also just a constant fight to not be consumed with trying to glorify myself. I know like just anything in life, a lot of times we get angry or upset or hurt because our ego is hurt. And we're worried, even right now, I'm preaching, but I'm worried about like, how do I look? How do I sound? Am I saying the right thing? Am I saying the right scriptures? And we just can become consumed with our own ego and trying to look good when really we should be surrendering to God every day and instead doing what glorifies him and not be worried about what people think or how we look, but instead, how are we making Jesus look? How are we making God look? Am I portraying him in a way that attracts people to him? We need to surrender daily. And when we surrender, that's when we allow God to shine through us and be glorified through us. Not only will he be glorified in us, but when we get to heaven, we will receive glory for pointing people to him and for glorifying him. So the more that we allow God to move through us and point people to him, the more reward we'll get in eternity for that. I want to share a verse with you that I kept praying about and asking God to reveal what it meant. And he was faithful to reveal it. And I thought it was really cool what was revealed. It's Colossians 1:27. It says, "To them God willed to make known what are the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory." So in this verse, I was just kind of asking God, like, what exactly is the hope of glory? I think a lot of times we hear scriptures and we're like, okay, like I've heard that. I think I know what it means, but I wanted to really understand what exactly is the hope of glory. And so God revealed to me that this hope is that we'll receive glory, not here on earth, but in heaven. So we're hoping for it. We're hoping for eternity. We're hoping for the rewards of heaven. So we're not supposed to hope of receiving glory here on earth. And I think a lot of us, even doing ministry, we're doing it with the right motives, but sometimes we can get caught up in that of like, oh, I hope one day my ministry will grow this big, and I'll get glory on earth for doing this, or if I do a certain career, give glory for achieving a certain status. But our hope shouldn't be in receiving glory on earth. Our hope is receiving glory in heaven once we get to heaven. And Jesus is the one who gives us that hope, because without him coming on earth, without him dying, we would have no hope of that. We would have fallen short. We would have no hope of coming to heaven and receiving glory and receiving rewards. So I don't think God wired us on accident to want glory. And I think what the pitfall of man is that we try to receive glory in our own efforts, our own means. Instead, we're to receive glory through Christ in us. So the more that we put ourselves aside and the more we die to ourselves, the more we allow God, Jesus, who's inside of us, to shine and receive the glory. So it's kind of like, a curtain that we allow to be unveiled to show Jesus inside of us. Instead of always trying to receive glory for our own efforts, we pull back the curtain and show Jesus inside of us to people. So I believe in heaven we'll receive glory as a reflection of Christ in us. So I'm going to read 2 Corinthians 3:18. I think it really beautifully describes our transformation into the image of God, Christ. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. So it says, with unveiled faces, we're beholding as if in a mirror the glory of the Lord. So we're looking in the mirror and we're being transformed into the image of Christ. We're looking in the mirror and seeing Jesus because he's in us. And we're being transformed. The more hardships we go through, the more we go through ourselves in our life, the more Christ can be revealed. So it says too that Christ allows the veil. Right before that verse, it says Christ allows the veil to be taken away to see the glory of the Lord. So right before that verse, it said, because the veil is taken away in Christ. Nevertheless, when one turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. So when we turn to Christ, we allow that veil to be taken away and his light in us can shine. So when is it that the light shines the brightest? Yeah, at night when it's dark. I experienced this like last night. I was trying to stumble to the bathroom and it was so dark, like I couldn't see anything. But then I saw like a little crack under our bathroom doorway and I was able to find it because of the light. But it was, that light stood out because it was so dark. So it's in the dark that light shines the brightest. I think for us, that includes dark and difficult times in our life. It's in hardships and afflictions when things aren't going our way. And how we choose to react to that is when we allow that light to shine the brightest. It's not when things are going great and people are like, wow, she's so joyful because her life is perfect. People see the joy of the Lord in us when everything's crashing down around us, but they're like, how are they still joyful? How do they still have hope? And that's when our light, Christ in us, shines the brightest. So although we go through difficulties as believers, it's just molding us to be vessels that shine Christ's light brighter. And I'm going to read 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. And after that, Romans 8:18. Okay, so the first one says, therefore, we do not lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And then Romans 8:18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. So the glory that Jesus will receive through us is so worth what we'll go through temporarily on earth. And really, I mean, earth is just, it feels like a moment compared to what eternity will be. Even though the times we go through and difficulties, they seem to take forever, but it's really just a blink of an eye compared to eternity. So while on earth, our job as Christ's ambassadors is to allow people to see the face of Christ through us. God has allowed his light to shine in our hearts for people to see the glory of God in us. And we see this in 2 Corinthians 4:6-7. God, who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. So I love that. It says that light shone out of the darkness, and it's through the glory of the face of Jesus Christ. And we are earthen vessels that allow that glory to be shown. So I really like that God likens us to being shining bright, and calls us that we are like stars. In Daniel 12:2-3, it talks about the last days, and it says, "And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." So I just think it's cool that God says we're like stars. Not like the celebrity stars, like Satan tries to make it. We have a desire to strive to be like stars, but Satan tries to make it stars where you're glorifying yourself. And then lastly, 2 Philippians 2:15-16 also likens us to stars. It says, "Then you'll shine among them like the stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I'll be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain." So even like now I'm thinking of it, that God likened like Abraham's descendants, that they would be numbered as the stars, as many as the stars. And Jesus himself, he's referred to as the bright morning star. And I don't think it's an accident that we have all these references to shining bright as a star, having God's light shine through us on the dark earth.